Michael. Thank you, everyone, for being here. I'm very happy to talk after Professor Birnhag. In my background, I came from a law faculty, intellectual property, unjust enrichment. So when I wrote my dissertation on cell phones with philosophy of technology, it was supposed to be unrelated to the issues that I dealt with in law school. But then I realized that there is a new type of cell phone apps. And these cell phone apps, they are about people who are measuring themselves. You know, who has a pedometer on his or her cell phone? Yeah, well, most of us, it's built in these days. So, you know, most of us, we do that. So with this, I'd like to share with you some of the thoughts that I've developed in the last few years. These kind of apps, they are termed QS, Quantified Self. Originally, it was a movement that emerged in the 90s, like 20, 30 years ago. These groups were composed of computer scientists and artists. And they were about measuring everything in their lives, not just the steps. Okay? They call themselves life hacking, personal analytics, data-driven life, self-tracking. But then in 2007, Wired magazine, you know, the Bible of the Geeks, said, well, the name of this type of movement is Quantified Self. And those who do that are QSers. It's QS and QSers. But there was nothing really new about this, because back in the 16th century, a guy named Sancturius from Padua, he published this book. He measured himself constantly. He was sitting, you see, on a weight. He weighted himself all the time. He weighted his food, and he also weighted what was going out. And he had this little notebook where he wrote his weight all the time. Okay? And it became so popular that King Charles II in 1664, he also measured himself before and after tennis, before and after every meal. It was really popular in Europe. But the point with digital technologies that you don't have, you know, some servant to run after you and write down in a little notebook. It's something that is done automatically. We don't have to do something, right? It's being done. And the amount of data is enormous. And the data is not just, you know, the steps that we're taking. That's, you know, or where we run. But also our sleeping patterns. You know that our sleeping patterns are unique per each and every person. And all of a sudden, sleeping is not non-action. It's being kind of an action that we monitor, okay? Our nutrition, of course, but also our mood. When I did my postdoc on happiness studies, it was very interesting to see how people measure their moods. Where I was happy, when I was happy, how many times per day, per week, per month. Stress, and also the self-management. My bank account, what is going in and out, all kinds of tasks that I'm managing for myself. And all this is with these beautiful pie charts and graphs showing how I improved over time. Note that it's not just medical data, okay? It's not just the nutrition and the steps and the heartbeat rate. It's things that are more, that we would relate more to the mind rather than to the body. Why do people do that? Why did these people monitor their mood, their happiness 24/7? What for? The first reason is kind of self-improvement. The things that I see are the things that I can then improve myself. I know that I did today only 5,000 steps. Maybe I should walk a bit more, okay? I know that, I can see that. The other thing is, well, I'm like King Charles II. I just want to learn more about myself. Or if I'm more extreme about this, I'm a narcissist, okay? And now I really adore myself, I admire myself, and with all these selfies that I do every morning, I also have these beautiful graphs that I share with everyone who knows me. But the more ideological explanations would say, maybe I should, I don't need those experts that would tell me who am I. I don't need an expert to tell me my heartbeat rate, okay? I have this Apple Watch, and I can monitor that as if I'm an expert. And the even more ideologist explanation would say, gee, why should only Netflix know that I'm happy on Sundays and not happy on Mondays, or vice versa, or whatever version you would like? Maybe I should be aware of that, because they don't tell me all this data that they collect about me. I don't know what they think about me. So maybe I should develop this kind of knowledge and know what I am. In 2016, I realized that it's not something only for geeks. The Israeli government, the Ministry of Health, together with a Digital Israel initiative, they initiated a project, Psefas. In English, it's mosaics. What they really wanted to do, and I'm sorry that these two slides are in Hebrew, it's taken from the project itself. And with the project, okay, sorry for the mess. Okay, and with the project itself, they are about to collect a community of several thousands of volunteers, okay, which can be easily developed to everyone in Israel. And for these volunteers, they are going to get their genome data. They're going to get their electronic health records, the clinical records. Interestingly, in Israel, 98% of the population has electronic health records 20 years back, which is amazing, especially in American terms, right? But also, you know, so far, well, nothing amazing. But also, they call behavioral information. And what they have here is QS, which we usually call a personal health record. Sensors of blood pressure, weight, physical activity, etc. And that etc., I love it. What does it mean, etc.? If I get a phone call from the bank saying, oh, you have a problem, well, maybe I'm stressful, and now all of a sudden, my clinical data goes down. Do they need that data? What is this, etc.? And what would happen when it will be expanded from the community of volunteers to practically everyone? I don't know. I really don't know. Okay? And I'm wondering what would happen to this data that is collected. And with this, because I come from humanities, I was thinking about this problem with two thinkers. And the first one is Michel Foucault. You know, whenever we talk about privacy, people are saying, yeah, privacy, surveillance, you know, Panopticon. Michel Foucault reads Jeremy Bentham. And Jeremy Bentham, he designed this kind of prison where the guard is here in the middle and all the inmates are around. They cannot see whether the guard is there looking at them or not. The guard sees them, they don't see the guard. Okay? ABC of surveillance, right? And he termed this structure, Michel Foucault, he said, this is not only for jails. We see that also in hospitals, schools, factories. We see that everywhere. It's something we see in modern societies. And therefore, modern societies are disciplinary societies because we somehow internalize the existence of this guard. Whether the guard looks at us or not, we don't care. We already behave as if there is someone looking at us, watching us constantly, okay? So this is the basic structure that we think of this jail-like. But then when I'm rereading Foucault, I see that as if it fits so nicely to the QS paradigm, because when he says the major effect of the Panopticon is to induce in the inmate a state of permanent visibility. And yes, it's a permanent visibility. Everybody can, like the company who is giving me the permission to use their app for monitoring my steps, all the time they see how many steps I did, where I walked them, when I walked them. They see that all the time. I don't know whether they really look at me, but I know that they can look at me all the time. Okay, so it's a matter of I know that they can classify me, whether I'm in the fast walkers, whether I'm what gender I am, my age, and they can classify me. And according to that, of course, they give me advertisements. That's why once in a while I like to turn off my ad blocker and look at my advertisements. And then I can understand what they think about me. You know, it's like being an astronomer. You can't look at a star, but you can see the shade of the star. It's the same logic that we can do. But I felt that somehow this type of this disciplinary society, sometimes it's not very well suited to the QS, because with QS, sometimes I don't care about my privacy. I just want my steps to be counted, right? That's why I downloaded this app. Although I know that in terms of privacy, it sucks. And then I moved to the next thinker, which is Gilles Deleuze. And Gilles Deleuze, in 1991, he publishes a Postscript on societies of control. And basically what he's saying, well, Foucault was right, that was modernity, no longer. Like, we're no longer in Kansas, yeah? So, well, allow me to read to you this beautiful quote. The administrations in charge never cease announcing supposedly necessary reforms. To reform schools, still today, yeah? 30 years later, we still reform schools. To reform industries, hospitals, the armed forces, prisons. But everyone knows that these institutions are finished, whatever the length of their expiration periods. It's only a matter of administering their last rites, of keeping people employed until the installation of the new forces knocking on the door. These are societies of control, which are in the process of replacing the disciplinary society. Now, what is this kind of new society? And allow me to walk with you. Deleuze provides us with lots of examples, and I picked up just a few of them. In disciplinary societies, we had to come up with a certain architecture. Yeah, Churchill was right. Yeah, it does something to the way we think and conceptualize. And what we had in the disciplinary society is what Deleuze calls the vast spaces of enclosure. Okay, the prisons, the schools. But now, you know, some schools, they don't have even fences around them, right? In Tel Aviv, there is one school with no fence around it, okay? Or hospitals, instead of keeping people inside a hospital, like the Hansen in Jerusalem that has a wall around it, all of a sudden people are treated in the community. And we think that it's right. We don't have to go to work. We can sit in a cafe and work. Like, all of a sudden, it's not a matter of architecture. It's a matter of where our bodies here and where our minds are. The second, and I'm moving from space to time here, he says, each time in the disciplinary society, we started from zero. I graduated high school. I went to the army. Started from zero. I went to the university, started from zero. I started a new job, starting from zero. But in society of control, my history is running after me. If I have this embarrassing photograph that I uploaded to Facebook when I was 16, it will continue to haunt me when I'm looking for a job, okay? Now, there are positive aspects of that. Because if my electronic health record is going with me for 20 years, that's good. That's good that my whole history is with me. But we have to look at the pros and cons. It's not something that is totally kosher or totally bad. But then when we look at the structures, in disciplinary society, we had what he called the mold. We had these standard protocol for medical treatment. Everybody should be treated in the same way. Okay? I'm still shocked that when medicines are tested on mice, it was until recently only male mice. Okay? Just for this, have this mold. And all of a sudden we speak of modulation. It's not mold. It's a modulation with precision medicine, for example, not to mention personalized medicine. And the way we were identified in the disciplinary society, I need to have my ID number, right? And my signature. I had to sign in some bureaucracies, they still require me to fax the form, right? For this reason, they're still stuck in the disciplinary society. But in society of control, what you have is the password. Now, the password is literally a password, a word that allows you to pass. And if I have the right password, I can pass throughout doors, etc. Now, sometimes this password is my fingerprint or my eyes, okay? It's something that is not necessarily a word that I'm creating, or maybe parts of my genetics. And next, and that's one of his strongest points, I think. He speaks of the movement from the individual to the individual. We're no longer individuals. It's a matter of being individuals. And yes, and I'm an individual that has some genetic aspects and some medical history, and maybe some of my QSing data that was collected. So I can be divided more and more. Think of the name of the project, Psephas, the mosaics. It's exactly this, taking us, the beautiful picture, and making us small stones, tiny stones. This is what we are composed of. It's not an individual. Yes, we are divided over and over and over, and deeper and deeper and deeper. And lastly, and that's my philosophy of technology background, we move from machines to computers, meaning that, well, in modernity we had these X-rays, okay, and all these machines-like, but in the society of control, most of the stuff is computerized. But it goes even deeper, the way I can resist these machines. And he says that with those machines, he says it's involving energy, of course, but with the passive danger of entropy and the active danger of sabotage, I can resist only by being Luddite and just take a hammer and ruin the machine. But with a computer, if I ruin it, so what? There's almost always a backup somewhere, and I can replace it. So it's the passive danger of jamming, but the active danger is piracy and the introduction of viruses. And I would like to look at it as being a life hacker, yeah, and of hacking. And all of a sudden, I get a new logic that what counts, he says, is not the barrier, but the computer that tracks each person's position and affects a universal modulation. And therefore, and this is one of the last sentences, Deleuze specifically refers to medicine. He said, the new medicine without doctor or patient singles out potential sick people and subjects at risk, yeah? And substitutes for the individual or numerical body the code of the individual material to be controlled. So I'm getting to my summary. So we can think of these QS practices that are getting into the medical arsenal, in a sense. We can think of them with Foucault's disciplinary societies, that if we are a QSer, and most of us are or will be, we don't know if and when we are watched, or if and when our data is going to be used. We don't know, and very frequently we don't even care. We are just produce the data, like the inmates. We produce the data and we don't know who is going to use it? We don't know what is being done with our data. Do we care? Not necessarily. People in the UK who entered hospitals signed kind of a consent that their data can be used for research, and they were very happy with it and very proud. But the only point in time that they were really pissed off with that was when that data was sold to Google. Yeah, that was a moment that, like, as long as you do research, and I don't care which kind of research, whether this research is being explicit now or something like a forest, okay? We don't care about it. So, does QS fit into disciplinary society? I'm not that sure. I'm not sure that thinking of it in terms of privacy and surveillance would lead us to productive places where we can engage with the public. And here I'm reminded with a small story. Nimrod Kozlovsky usually tells this story about China. You know, China, the biggest surveillance society today. And there, people are measured by this social network that they get social credit. And if you behave yourself nicely, you get enough points, and then you get a good apartment, and then you can get a passport to get out. And if you are not, then you can't get it. But unlike Facebook, okay, the Western democratic, as if, the Chinese, they tell the users the consequences in real time. Like, if I go and buy diapers, I get a thumb up and X more points. And if I meet someone who is not very much liked, let's say, by the party, then I get a thumb down. Like, immediately I know what, if I'm behaving good or bad, and where I'm, and in which category do I belong by the algorithm. It's something that is transparent. And this kind of transparency makes it much more easy for those people to think in terms of privacy and surveillance. So maybe the more appropriate framework to think is maybe with a Deleuze societies of control. And our data serves as a kind of a password that allows us to pass. And we move from molds to dynamic classifications. I'm not always classified in one spot. Maybe my mutations are today in a place that I'm with no risk. And tomorrow, somebody out here is going to find something, and then I'll find myself somewhere else. And then vice versa. It's very dynamic. It's not fixed. And no longer the architecture is that important. Okay? Maybe it's more the body and my mind. Did I get the phone call from the bank or not? Am I happy or not? And I'm becoming a individual of genetic data, of my quantified self-parameters, and my medical history, all these. So it's important that I have a history, yeah, but I would also like to keep the option of hacking. Thank you.